Hare Krishna, Namaste. There is a common question about Gita, whether it is for beginners or advanced. Whenever we speak to any devotees, a spiritualist, they recommend us to study Bhagavad Gita. They say Bhagavad Gita can answer most of the questions that one may have about spirituality. Bhagavad Gita is glorified that this one literature is sufficient enough for us and we don't need to refer to any other literatures because it has all the answers for the questions that we may have. Krishna in the 9th chapter 1st sloka says, Idam tu te guyathamam pravakshyami anusuyave jnanam vijnana sahitam yajñātva mokshesya subhat. My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. From this sloka, it is very clear to us that Arjuna was non-envious. Therefore, Krishna instructed the most confidential knowledge unto him. Now the question is, should we study Bhagavad Gita and become free of envious nature, or first we need to become free of envious nature and then be qualified to study Bhagavad Gita? Because in the sloka 9.1, Krishna clearly states that he is sharing the secrets because Arjuna is not envious. He has faith. He is devoted. Then what about those who are envious, those who are not devoted, those who doesn't have faith in Krishna? How Bhagavad Gita is going to be beneficial for such people? In fact, if I have faith, if I am non-envious, if I am devoted, then why even I must study Gita? And if we say, no, it is only for those who doesn't have those things, then Krishna clearly states here, unless and until you are free of envious nature, you will not be instructed, you will not understand this, or I will not give you this knowledge. Seems to be quite hard to understand who should study Bhagavad Gita. If a person is devoted, has faith, not envious, he may mostly know the topics in Bhagavad Gita. If a person is not devoted, he may not study Bhagavad Gita because Krishna clearly states, you are envious, therefore you are not going to get this. Hope the first challenge is understood here. Now to add on complexity to what we just discussed, in the 10th chapter 14th sloka, Arjuna says, Sarvamyetat ritam manye enmam vadasi kesava. O Krishna, I totally accept as truth all that you have told me. That means from this sloka, we understand one must accept whatever Krishna says. When Krishna says he is the cause of all causes, I must accept. He is the maintainer, he is the destroyer. From him everything comes. To him everything goes back. I must accept. When Krishna says there is no one equal to me, no one above me, we must accept. When Krishna says surrender unto me, we must accept. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita is only for those who accept whatever Krishna says and not for those who doesn't agree to Krishna. That's how it sounds. Now let's understand how to resolve these confusions or challenges. Whether Bhagavad Gita is only for advanced devotees or even for anyone, a beginner. Krishna has designed his Gita teachings in a way that benefits both beginners as well as the advanced. Both can study and benefit out of it. Bhagavad Gita, which is grouped into 3 parts, part 1 from chapter 1 to 6, part 2 chapter 7 to 12, part 3 chapter 13 to 18. One who is not interested in Krishna, one who is not interested in performing bhakti yoga, but only cares about himself, being selfish, must study the first part of Gita. from chapter 1 through 6, specifically from chapter 2 to 6. By studying these 5 or 6 chapters, one will learn a lot about oneself, who they are, about one's life, about one's purpose of existence, how they are different from the Prakriti, from the body, how everyone is of same nature, and it is only the body which makes all the differences. Also will know a lot more about Atma, how it is indestructible, imperishable, how it is eternal, never born and never dies, and it is full of knowledge in its natural position. With that awareness, one gets some realization. Then with that self-realization, one starts getting additional questions, more challenging questions, which are beyond one's capacity to understand, to grasp, just by studying the first 6 chapters. Questions like, who controls these many Atmas, this Prakriti? Who maintains them? Who is a creator? Who is a destroyer? Nothing can come by itself. There must be a source for anything to exist. If there is a source, who is the source of that source? That which doesn't have a source must be the cause of everything. Does he has a form? Does he has a place? Does he have qualities? Does he have any opulences, attributes, etc.? So these are beyond one's capacity to understand just by reading the first 6 chapters. To get answers to those questions, that person initially was only interested on himself, his Atma, out of curiosity and interest, now enters into the second part of Bhagavad Gita from chapter 7 through 12. He was a beginner. Now that beginner is further advanced. Therefore, he starts studying the second part of the Gita to get answers. Also, we know by studying first 6 chapters thoroughly that Krishna did not speak anything about himself in those chapters. Only exception is the chapter 4 with few slokas where he mentions about his avatara ragasya, secret of his appearance in this world. But otherwise, he never speaks about himself in the first 6 chapters. It's all about Atma, Jivatma specifically. Because when we say Atma, it includes also Paramatma. Therefore, specifically in the first 6 chapters, the focus is on Jivatma and how to attain the Jivatma, how to have the vision of the Jivatma. When one completes studying the second part of Bhagavad Gita, all those questions that one had before at the completion of the first part are cleared now. Everything is answered now. Then in 13th, 14th and 15th chapter, Krishna puts everything together with additional information related to whatever he discussed in the previous 2 parts from chapter 1 through 12, which then makes one's understanding stronger now. No more doubt about Atma, no more doubt about Paramatma, no more doubt about Prakriti, and no more doubt about their relationship. Then in 16th, 17th, 18th chapters, Krishna speaks about those which are unimaginable to our human mind and intelligence. But by repeatedly studying those chapters, under the guidance of a teacher, those chapters will also be clear. And as one progresses through these chapters and come closer to the end of 18th chapter, one will come to a point where not sure what to do. Because ignorance was bliss. Now that we gain knowledge, we know what we are, why we took birth, why are we struggling here, what is going to happen to us after death. We know all these things. We also know there are different paths by which we can attain Krishna to end this material repeated cycle of death and birth. We learned about Atma, we learned how to get realization of Atma, then we learned Bhakti and how to develop that Bhakti. We learned about Prakriti and Prakriti relationship with Atma. With all this data, when we put together, we come into a panic state. We come to a standstill, not knowing how to proceed any further. What needs to be done? Because Krishna has loaded us with so much of information and instructions. When we are given with a lot of choices, it's very hard. We get confused which one to pick. When we are not given choice, then it's not a big deal. It's easy go. Arjuna was in the same state. One who come to this stage by studying Bhagavad Gita will come to an understanding and realization, or must come to an understanding and realization that there is nothing much I can do myself to save my soul from this horrible material existence. When one comes to that state, Krishna, looking at our sad condition, out of his compassion, and gives his final instruction. Sarvadharmana parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarva papebhyah mokshayishyami ma suchaha. Do not grieve, do not fear, just simply surrender unto me. Rest assured, everything else will be taken care. I promise you. This is the last instruction that Krishna gives to us. Krishna did not tell this Charma Shloka at the beginning of the chapter, not in the first chapter, not in the second chapter, not in the fourth, fifth, sixth, only in the last chapter. He took almost close to 700 slokas before he can give this final instruction to us. But he wanted to say this in the very first time, but knowing that we are just beginners, we don't have faith, we are not devoted, we are so much engrossed in so many material activities, he preserved, he controlled himself not to open his mouth to utter this sloka in the beginning. He patiently waited until the end. He patiently waited to see our progress, see our faith growing, and then he gives this instruction. He gradually and carefully cultivates and educates us from the lowest level wherever we were or, and brings to a point where we are ready to surrender unto his lotus feet. And this is only possible when we come to an awareness that I am helpless, I have no other hopes. And with proper understanding that topics from Bhagavad Gita about Atma, Paramatma, Prakriti, Kala and Karma and their interaction and relationship, knowing each of their nature, and then one will be able to surrender unto Krishna out of love. When one surrenders unto Krishna, one is bestowed with Krishna Prema. In other words, one can only surrender to Krishna if one has pure love. Also, it is true, only when one surrenders to Krishna, one gets that pure love. But for either one to happen, one must study Bhagavad Gita. Either one is a beginner or even one who has faith, one who is advanced than the beginner. Therefore, the right way to educate others whom we come into contact, say if they are beginner who has less or no faith in Krishna, is to suggest them to study the first 6 chapters only. After they complete that, then we suggest them to go to the next set of chapters. For those who doesn't have faith should not jump straight into the second part of Bhagavad Gita, that is 7 through 12. It will further disturb them and they will not be satisfied and will not get complete answers for their questions, and they may even commit offenses. So study the first 6 chapters understand oneself and then understand Krishna, Krishna Bhakti and Krishna Bhaktas. Those who are familiar with these three books, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, can easily relate the nice sequence and relationship between these three scriptures. First, after glancing through Bhagavad Gita one time, one must study the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. Then one can study Srimad Bhagavatam, which will enrich the understanding of the second set of Bhagavad Gita, which focuses on Bhaktas, Bhakti and Bhagavan. Then after finishing the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, along with Srimad Bhagavatam, then studying of Chaitanya Charitamrita, that will enrich the understanding of the last part of Bhagavad Gita, that is chapter 13 through 18, focusing on selfless service and surrendering process to develop the highest love of Godhead. In this way, in this approach, one may have a complete roundup of these three great literatures: Bhagavad Gita 1 to 6 chapters, Srimad Bhagavatam, and then Bhagavad Gita 7 to 12 chapters, and then Chaitanya Charitamrita, and then finally Bhagavad Gita 13 through 18 chapter. Of course, it's going to be taking some time, but the point what is being made here, it's to see how Bhagavad Gita is closely interlinked with other scriptures. To conclude, Gita is a literature which is applicable for anyone and everyone in any level of life they are in. Krishna, being a great teacher, Jagat Guru, who has nicely sequenced the entire 18th chapter, very nicely grouped them in a way that is applicable for anyone to study. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Sri Gita Acharya ki jai. Thank you. Hare Krishna.